I unfolded the letter slowly, feeling the collective anticipation thickening the air around me. Every whisper in the cathedral seemed to die as the wax seal broke with a soft crack that echoed louder than it should have. The letter inside was written in Eleanor's familiar cursive, bold, looping, unhurried. It felt almost alive, as though she were speaking directly through me. "My dearest family," I began, my voice trembling but steady enough to carry through the vaulted ceilings. "If you're hearing this, it means I've finally gone to join the roses in my garden, and perhaps, at long last, found peace." A murmur rippled through the pews, quickly hushed. My father shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. "I have no intention of wasting words on pleasantries," I continued, my eyes scanning the page. "Each of you knows what you've done, and what you've taken. Some of you have built your fortunes on deceit, others on silence, but I'm tired of silence, and if Olivia is reading this, then it means I've finally chosen to tell the truth." A wave of tension rolled through the room. The minister glanced nervously at Morton, who remained motionless, as if he too had been waiting years for this moment. I looked down again, my heart pounding. 30 years ago, Montgomery Industries was nearly destroyed by an internal scandal. My brother, Charles Montgomery, I looked up briefly at my father, claimed to have saved the company by negotiating an emergency buyout. What he didn't tell anyone was that the buyout funds came from me, from the trust our parents left in my name. Gasps echoed through the pews. My father's complexion drained to a sickly gray. He stood slightly, his voice sharp. "That's a lie. She agreed to it." I held up a hand, my voice gaining strength. "Aunt Eleanor wrote, I agreed to save the family name, not to erase myself from its legacy. You took everything, control, recognition, even my rightful shares, and then spread the lie that I'd stepped away willingly." I paused, the sound of my breath loud in the silence. "She said she stayed quiet because she wanted peace, but peace never came. She watched for decades as you, father, and your children reaped the rewards of her sacrifice." My cousins John and Rebecca exchanged alarmed glances. I caught the flicker of panic in their eyes. "She never intended revenge," I continued softly, "but she believed in truth, and she believed that one day, someone in this family would have the courage to bring it to light." A low hum of voices rose in the cathedral. The minister tried to calm the murmuring guests, but no one was listening anymore. Every pair of eyes was locked on me, and the letter in my trembling hands. I turned the page and found a small envelope attached to the bottom. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside were several photographs, yellowed but clear. They showed 2 signatures on a document. One was Eleanor's, the other my father's. Underneath, a line in Eleanor's handwriting, "Transfer of ownership under duress." I held the photo up. "She kept proof." My father's voice cracked across the church like a whip. "You don't know what you're talking about. She was unwell. She was senile near the end." Morton stood then, holding up his hand. "Mr. Montgomery, your sister personally delivered those documents to me 6 weeks ago, along with notarized testimony confirming her full mental competence." The color drained completely from my father's face. He sank back into his seat as a heavy silence settled. I swallowed hard, my throat tightening as I read the final lines of the letter. "Olivia, my darling, by the time you read this, they will hate you for speaking my truth, but stand firm. You were always my greatest pride, the only one who never wanted anything from me except love. The world will know what really happened, and the company will finally belong to someone who values honesty over greed." My voice cracked on the last word. The room felt colder suddenly. My father's head was bowed, his shoulders shaking, not with grief, but with rage. My cousins whispered furiously among themselves, their earlier smugness evaporating. Morton cleared his throat, stepping forward. "Per Eleanor Montgomery's final instructions, this letter and the supporting evidence will be made public after today's service. Her estate will transfer immediately to Miss Olivia Blackwood." The crowd erupted, some in shock, others in applause, others in whispered disbelief. Cameras flashed. Someone near the back began recording. I stood there, the letter still in my hands, the weight of Eleanor's legacy pressing down on me like the scent of 1,000 roses in bloom. Then, from the front pew, my father rose again. His voice trembled, no longer with anger, but something closer to desperation. "Olivia, please, we can talk about this privately. Don't let her destroy everything." I met his gaze. "She didn't destroy anything, Dad, she just told the truth." He flinched as though struck. For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty, real, raw, on his face. When the service ended, people swarmed around Morton for answers. I slipped out through the side doors, craving air. Outside, the winter sun gleamed on the cathedral's stone steps, and I could almost hear Eleanor's laughter carried on the breeze. Mrs. Peters was waiting by the car, her eyes glistening. "She'd be proud of you, Miss Olivia. She always said you'd be the one to end it." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. As I looked toward the horizon, the morning light catching on the petals of the rose pinned to my jacket, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The truth was out, the legacy was mine. And somewhere, I knew Aunt Eleanor was smiling. But deep down, a quiet thought stirred. If this was only the first truth she wanted revealed, what other secrets might still lie buried in the mansion at Montgomery Estate? Before she died, I began, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "My Aunt Eleanor left me a letter with specific instructions. She wanted it read here today, in front of everyone who knew her." The cathedral fell utterly silent. Even the faint hum of the heating system seemed to pause as I broke the wax seal. The echo of the tear rang through the air. "Why?" The question came from my cousin John, his face pale. "Why would she reveal this now?" I turned back to the letter. "She's revealing this now," I read, "because I've spent 45 years building this company into something worthy of Harold Bennett's name. I've used its profits to fund research, to employ thousands, to repair the damage that began with one man's greed. But I've also spent those years watching my brother and his family live off a fortune that was never truly theirs, watching them mistake silence for virtue, and wealth for worth." My father sat down heavily. The color had drained completely from his face. His hands were trembling in his lap. I stayed silent. I continued reading, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to protect the innocent. By the time I had proof, the company was too big, too many lives depended on it. Destroying Richard would have destroyed them all. So I waited, I built, I ensured that when the truth came out, Montgomery Industries would be strong enough to survive it. I drew out one final envelope from the bottom of Eleanor's stack, a letter, aged and yellowed, addressed in delicate handwriting to Sarah Bennett. "Which brings me to my final confession," I read. "Harold left behind a daughter, Sarah. I found her years after his death. She was bright, curious, full of potential. I funded her education, her research, her work in sustainable engineering, always anonymously. I watched her grow into the kind of visionary her father had been." Gasps rippled again through the room as a woman in the middle pew slowly stood. She was about my age, with dark eyes that mirrored the man in the photographs. Sarah Bennett. Eleanor had made sure she would be here. "The second part of my will," I continued, "leaves 30% of Montgomery Industries to Sarah Bennett, in restitution for what was stolen from her father. The controlling interest goes to my niece, Olivia Blackwood, the only Montgomery who has shown both courage and conscience." I looked out at the stunned faces. "The letter is signed, Eleanor Montgomery, co-founder of Montgomery Industries and keeper of its greatest shame." The cathedral seemed to hold its breath. Then Sarah Bennett began walking forward, slowly, deliberately. The sound of her heels on the marble echoed like a heartbeat. She stopped in front of my father, who looked up at her with hollow eyes. "All these years," Sarah said softly, "I thought my father failed, that he walked away. I never knew the truth." Her voice broke slightly. "I never knew he was killed for his own brilliance." I stepped down from the podium and met her gaze. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I think Eleanor tried to give you back what should have been yours." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "She gave me more than that," she said. "She gave me a future." The rest of the day passed in a haze of confusion and shock. Guests whispered, journalists lingered outside the cathedral, and Morton fielded furious questions from my cousins. My father disappeared before the reception even began. Some said he fled to avoid the press. Others said he collapsed in his car, broken by the truth he'd spent his life denying. Weeks passed before I heard from him again. He checked himself into a private facility in Vermont, claiming exhaustion, but I knew it wasn't exhaustion, it was reckoning. Months went by. The world learned the real story behind Montgomery Industries. The headlines were brutal, but the company weathered it, just as Eleanor had predicted. With Sarah's technical brilliance and my leadership, we transformed Montgomery Industries into a beacon of sustainability, transparency, and renewal. A year later, I stood in Eleanor's rose garden, the air thick with the scent of blossoms. The Queen Elizabeth roses she'd gifted me were in full bloom, vivid and strong. Sarah joined me, her sleeves rolled up, her hands dusted with soil. You know, she said, smiling faintly, I always felt like someone was watching out for me. I used to think it was my dad. Now, I think it was Eleanor. She watched over both of us. I said, she couldn't undo the past, but she could shape the future. Sarah nodded, tracing her fingers over a rose petal. Do you ever wonder if she regretted waiting so long to tell the truth? I thought about it for a long moment. I think she regretted the pain it caused, but not the timing. She waited until her silence would hurt no one but the guilty. Sarah smiled softly. She'd be proud of you, you know, of what you've done. I looked toward the distant skyline, where the new Montgomery Industries headquarters gleamed in the sunlight, a building designed by Sarah, powered entirely by renewable energy. She'd be proud of us, I said. We're building the company she and your father dreamed of, together. That evening, after Sarah left, I returned to Eleanor's study. The room smelled faintly of roses and old paper. As I sorted through her files, a small note slipped from between the pages of her desk calendar. The ink was faded, but the handwriting unmistakable. Dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you did what I could not, you spoke the truth aloud. Remember, the roses bloom every year because we prune them. Pain clears the way for growth. You've pruned the rot from our family tree. Now, let something beautiful grow. All my love. Eleanor. I sat there for a long time, the note trembling in my hands. Outside, the evening sun poured golden light over the garden. The roses swayed gently in the breeze, as if acknowledging her words. Eleanor had left me more than a fortune or a company. She'd left me her legacy, one built not on power or secrecy, but on courage and redemption. And as I looked out over her garden, I finally understood her last lesson. From the darkest soil, the strongest roses grow.